My name is Jeff Morris, and I'm located here on the Atlantic coast of Canada. So this webinar is on our new Navisworks courseware. It's gone through quite a lot of changes. So in this webcast, we will explain the change in the name of the course, and we'll also be introducing 3 new chapters that we added to the course compared to the 2020 release. One deals with quantification, the other one is the scripter, and the third one deals with rendering. We'll also be going through some sample exercises based on those 3 new chapters, being quantification, the scripter, and rendering. So one thing that we did right off the bat is we changed the name. In 2020, it was called Using Autodesk Navisworks in a BIM Workflow. Not only is that a mouthful, but it also got confused quite readily with our BIM 360 book courseware. So therefore, we changed the name to very simple Autodesk Navisworks 2021 Fundamentals. And that also falls in line with our other Ascent courseware, Civil 3D, I believe Revit as well. A variety of our courseware has the fundamental title to it. And fundamental also means that we are not going to go through every aspect of the program. We're covering it at a fundamentals level. Quantification is one new chapter that we've added to this. And the idea behind quantification is that we can estimate materials, and we can measure areas, and we can count components such as doors, windows, etc. And we can perform a variety of takeoffs either in the 3D model or in 2D plans such as DWFs, or we can even create virtual takeoffs. And what a virtual takeoff is, if there's an item we know that belongs in the model, but it has not yet been modeled, for example, a door, then we can add a note to that, and that will be accounted for in the virtual takeoff. Quantification is available for both Navisworks Managed and Navisworks Simulate users. So for the quantification exercises, we'll be creating and working with the 3D model takeoff data. We'll be using a quantification workbook that had been set up earlier in an exercise to extract quantities from the 3D model. And then we'll be looking at some tools available to us to see, to look at the items that have been taken off in the model. So this is it. I'll be demonstrating this, and this is a live demonstration, so bear with me if there are some technical hiccups. I should be more optimistic, but I guess I'm realistic. So let me switch over to Navisworks here. So this is Navisworks Managed 2021, and I've already opened up the school takeoff Navisworks file. So we have 6 models that that belong to this school. And as I click on each individual one, they get highlighted. So this is our architectural model. This is the site model. Now the others you don't see because the architectural model obscures them. I can hide the architectural model. I usually use the Control-H shortcut. And now you can see the other models, the electrical model, the mechanical model, the plumbing, and the structural. So I'm going to hide the site, and I'm going to unhide with my Control-H keyboard shortcut the architectural model. Okay, so for the quantification, on our Home tab, we have a quantification And notice the keyboard shortcut is Control F8. And this will open up my quantification. My sheet browser, when first time I open up the quantification in a model, it appears if I wanted to do 2D takeoffs. I don't want to do this in this exercise, so I'm just going to close out of this. And the quantification has 3 different tabs. I have my quantification workbook. Oh, I should also point out that both for the quantification and the rendering that we'll be going over later, and the scripter to some extent, it's ideal to have multiple monitors, 2 monitors, so I can actually take this quantification workbook and move it off to the side. But I'm going to leave it at the bottom here. And I can also unpin it so it furls up down at the bottom, or I can use my pin to have it pinned down below. The quantification workbook consists of a resource catalog where I can define, and this is all done in a previous exercise, where I can define all the resources that I want to take off in this model, such as rebars, studs, etc. And then I have an item catalog that takes all these different individual resources and adds it together as items. So example for interior finishing, I have my floor finishing, and then I can add a variety of components that belong to that floor finishing, such as glue, such as nails, such as strapping, etc. So I'm going to go to my quantification workbook, and as I said, it's already set up to a certain degree. Now let's look at how we can start adding stuff to this workbook. So I'm going to expand my foundations, my standard foundations, and let me just see here, and wall foundations. And now I'm going to go, I have some sets already defined within this. Continuous footing, sorry, I didn't go down deep enough. I wanted to go to continuous footing. And in my sets, I already have a set predefined for continuous footing. It barely shows up here, so I'm going to change my viewport to structure. And now you can see as I select I'm going to unselect that. And if I go to my sets once again and go to my continuous footing, you see the continuous footings gets highlighted. So now what I can do is I can simply click on this set that's already predefined, and I can click and drag it into my workbook under continuous footing. And it adds all these continuous footing elements to my workbook. And as I scroll across, you can see that it's already added up the volume, how many continuing footings I have, and the area of my continuous footings. I'm going to deselect this now. And the next thing I want to look at are these pile caps. So another way of, first of all, I'm going to expand my pile caps. Let's see, where are they? Column foundations and pile caps. So in this heading, I have 9 pile caps and 6 pile caps. So I could select each individual one, but in this case, I'm going to go to my search. On my home tab for Navisworks, I have find items. And I can look for items I can look for the items whose name contains pile cap -9. I can find all of them. And now I see in my selection tree that it selected all of the pile caps, and they're also highlighted in my model. And what I can do is I can right click, and I want to, selection tree. In my selection tree, I can add this to my quantification, to the takeoff item. But it gives me a warning here. I'm going to say no, I don't want to see what the possible explanation is because I do know it. And this is all written up in the book. This is almost step by step the exercises that we're doing in the book. The reason it can't take that off is you notice that, let me expand this a little bit more. I have all my pile caps, but I also have the heading of the pile cap. And it can't take off the heading of the pile cap. So I'm simply going to hold my control key, select the heading of the pile cap, deselect it, and now I can add these to my quantification. And as I do that now, I can see that it has counted all my pile caps. It's found 28 of them, and it accumulates the other materials as well, like the total length and the total width, etc. Now, the next thing I want to do is, I'm not going to go through each individual one here. I just wanted to show you one more thing. For my interior finishing, so for my shell, interior finishing, bear with me a minute here. Look up in the exercises. Interior construction. I'm going to select, I have a variety of interior doors already set up, and I want to look for the interior single doors. So I could go to my find item before, I could select individual items and take them off, but in this case I'm going to do my quick find for single. And it finds the very first single door in my selection tree. So now I can go and look for all of them that have the same name. In my selection tree, it found all of them. And just as before, it also selected the first category. So I'm going to deselect this one. But for the single doors, they're on my first floor and my second floor. So you see that these doors are on my second floor. So I also have to go all the way up to my first floor, and deselect those. And now I can add these to my quantification as well. Oh, actually, no, in this case, we're going to do it a little bit different. So for my model takeoff, I want to take off to the selected. So these exercises are geared very much on showing you all the different ways we can select and we can add it to the quantification. So we're not going to do the same thing all over, use the same method over and over again. We want to teach you different methods. Now, another thing that we can do is we can show the takeoffs. So if I look at show the takeoffs, it shows me just the items that have been taken off, and the rest of the model has been hidden. Or I can uncheck my show takeoff, the entire model is shown. Or I can hide my takeoff, and now you can see all the objects that have not yet been taken off. So my pile caps, something must have gone wrong with my pile caps because we see our doors, but we don't see the pile caps. And then finally, when I'm done, I can export this whole workbook. I can export my quantities to Excel, or this is also explained in the course, I can export my catalog. So once I have my catalog all set up, I can export that so I can use it in future Navisworks exercises. Let's go back to our PowerPoint here. The next chapter that we added was the scripter. And the scripter, we can do some animation in Navisworks that we could do in the last course. But what the scripter actually is it allows us to add interaction with the model. So for example, if I approach the door, I can have the door opening so I don't walk through the door. Or if I have a particular keystrokes, I can program those keystrokes in for to script various actions that happen with keyboards. For example, it could write out to an external file, a particular text message, or it can invoke other actions as well. So the scripter is all done through the animator, where we can start setting up our scripts. And then we can have the variety of actions within these scripts. So for example, here we have the door swinging open at a hinge point. So for the exercise that we did in the book is the outer door swings, pivots open as you open or close the door. The inner doors slide open, so we actually move the doors laterally. So in this practice, we will add the scripts first to the outer doors to have them pivot, and then as we approach the inner door, it will slide as well. Okay, so let's jump over back to my Navisworks. I'm going to close out of my quantification workbook. I can close out of each individual panel if I want to. Item catalog, resource catalog, or I can just select my quantification up here, and it closes my quantification panel. I'm going to open up my next one, which is, I don't want to make my changes to this, save my changes. And here we have the same model again. I'm going to go to my front entry. And we're going to look at the scripter now. An interesting thing about the scripter, it is not here on the main home tab. It's on the animation tab. And on the animation tab, we have two. One that allows us to enable the scripts to make them usable, or the other one is the scripter. Oh, I opened up the wrong, sorry. There's no scripts in this. I opened up the wrong model. There we go. Okay. This is the one that has the scripts already defined in it. And within the exercises, we go through this step by step so you can define your own scripts. But I just wanted to show you what the scripts are about. I can add folders to my scripts to manage them logically. I can delete scripts, or I can add new scripts. And each script has an event. So for example, the condition is on hotspot, which means as I approach the door, within the sphere of my selection, and the sphere radius is 35 feet. I have two doors. So again, I'm running out of room here, but I can show my two doors. And these two doors, this is what happens when when I'm entering it, the two doors will, it will play the animation that I created earlier. And when I exit, so when I leave, it plays the animation in reverse. So I have that too for the two exterior doors. For the two interior doors, I can show those So those will actually slide open. And the third script we have is, I had a little bit of fun with this. We have this tree that actually grows when I hit a particular keystroke, or it shrinks when I hit another keystroke. It's kind of goofy, but then it also writes a text file to an external file. It writes a message. So to see this in action, I'm going to enable my scripts, and you notice that if the scripts are not enabled, I can modify all this. I could change this around, but when I enable the scripts become read-only, and I can no longer make any changes to this. So let's just collapse this down to the bottom here and unpin it. So my scripter is a little tab down here. And just to show it in action, my scripts are now enabled. I'm just going to deselect everything. And I'm going to start walking around. I could use the standard view cube tools that are the same in Civil 3D, AutoCAD, Revit. They all have all use this tool, but I'm going to use the Navisworks tools. So I'm going to start walking. Let's just change our point of field of vision a little bit more. So as I start walking, as I get closer to the door. So one great thing with Navisworks is I can peruse the model, and as I get close to the door, come on. There. So the doors open up. Oops. I stepped back there out of the radius. That's why they started closing. And now as I approach the second doors within 35 feet, the doors slide open. So now I'm going to walk through the doors, and now I'm going to look behind me. So I can actually turn around, and you see the doors, since I exited the 35-foot radius, it reversed the first doors and it shut them. And now as I walk backwards, you're going to see as I exit the 35-foot radius, the doors are going to slide shut. And as I move forward again, I'm within my 35 feet. And as I move into my doors, my second doors, now they're going to swing open. And again, I can look around. My sliding doors have already shut. And if I walk backwards, then you can start seeing the doors shutting again. So what I like about the scripter is we can add all sorts of interaction to the model. If I select something, it can send a message to an exterior file. I can look around. I can prevent me from walking through walls, and I can also have the doors open and close as I walk through them. Okay. Now the third chapter that we added was on rendering. And what rendering is about is we can provide materials, and we can provide lighting, and we can provide environmental settings to our model to create more physically correct renderings. Now, if the model came from say something like Revit or another BIM type product that already has lighting in it and that already has materials in it, Navisworks is going to read these materials. So we can override those materials, or we can add materials to basic generic 3D models that may not have any materials on it. And the same with the lights. It will read the lights from Revit, or we can supplement those lights, or we can edit those lights. Rendering is available for Navisworks Manage and Navisworks Simulate. So just bear with me a minute. Throat was getting a bit dry there. So in this exercise, we're going to be adding materials and lights to the model and look at some of the results. Let's tab back over again. So we're going to open up our next model here, lobby test. So let's just hide the, no, I'm going to leave it at. I was going to hide the site, but I'm going to leave it. So I'm going to go to my lobby. And one thing about, I really like Navisworks. There's a lot of cool tools in it. But one thing that we can set is when we pick on something, it can either select the entire file, it can select a layer, it can select the first object. But in this case, I want to select 2 individual walls, so I'm going to select geometry. And so for my rendering, that is available on my, I don't need the scripter anymore. I can close out of that. It's available right on my home screen, and I can float it, unpin it, and float it around. Again, if you have a second monitor, it's great to have a second monitor because it does take up quite a lot of room. Or I'm just going to pin it over here on the side. Come on. Let's pin it on this side. And then I can unpin it and it collapses. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a material that I want to provide to these 2 walls. Select my first wall, hold the control key down, select my second wall. And then for my materials, I'm going to select the material that I want. In the exercise, I did point this out, but there's a paint section and a wall paint section. So you got to make sure that you use the wall paint section, not the paint section. And then we select the material, and I can drag that onto my 2 walls. Now I'm going to change it to my first object because I want to, you see the concrete that came in, the concrete and this shiny tile that came in from my Revit models, as well as the metal of the lamp fixtures. But we want to put a checkerboard tile on this floor. So I'm going to, again, deselect everything, select the floor. And this is under flooring, vinyl, and it's my checkerboard. Black and white. And I can right click and assign this to the selection. Again, we show you different methods of providing it. Now it's a little bit fine, so I'm going to go to my material mapping, which is the next tab over. And I have a variety of ways of mapping the materials onto my selected objects. And there's a really nice little tooltips down here. So I can go to box, it'll show it how it gets mapped, spherical, or, but in this case, I want to do planar. I also want to decrease the scale so the tiles get larger, and you see we see the immediate results. Okay. Now for the lighting, select none. I have a variety of lights. The scene lights will show you the lights that came in with the authoring tools, such as Revit. or I can do my full lighting, which shows you the lights, the lighting effects. Now this takes a little while. I usually work when I'm working in Navisworks with headlight or no lights, because full lights tend to bog Navisworks down a little bit more. So in my rendering tab, I can show my lights, the light glyphs, and these are the lights that came in with Revit. Okay. I'm running out of room here. And we can also see all these lights that came in with Revit. And if I select a particular light, it gets highlighted in my list over here. Or I can select a light here and it gets highlighted in the model, so I know which is which. And what I would recommend is that you take all these lights and you rename them. But I'm going to create another light. You see that my table lamp here doesn't have a light. So I'm going to create a point light. And let's just call it table 1. And I'm going to place it within my table lamp here. And you see the effects are immediate, similar to the tiling, and it does tend to bog it down a little bit. So this is my table lamp, and it's way too bright. So I'm going to change the intensity. I want not candela, I want my wattage, and 1200 watts is a little bit much, so I'm going to change it to 50 watts. And it takes effect immediately. Can also change the color of my lamp. Okay. The next thing I want to add is a, let's just pan over here so we can see this a little bit better. Okay. I want to select a spotlight on this overhead. And because it's a spotlight, it's directional. Now I can tell it where to aim its beam at. And let's call this one floor lamp. And spotlights have a hotspot. Oops, sorry. So I can control the fall off, moving it back and forth. Let's try that again. Or I can control the hotspot and the fall off. So either with my grips, did it again, didn't I? Or within my output here. Okay. And then I can turn my glyphs on and off. Now for the environment setting, I'm going to go to my exterior viewport. And most of these lights were brought in through Revit. Let's turn off the glyphs. And in my environmental tab, this is where I can change my geographic area. I can change my exposure, the time of date, date and time that I want the lighting for. And I can turn off the sun. Oh wait, go to my full lights. So this would be my night view because I turned off my sun, and I can also turn on or turn off my exposure. Oops. So my exposure was a little bit bright there. And then I can take this and I can do full renderings with this. Now the rendering does take quite a long time. And for the rendering, you have the choice of rendering it directly within Navisworks, or you can send it out to the cloud to render it in the cloud through the Autodesk rendering engine. So what we looked at in this webcast was we explained why we changed the name from working in a BIM environment to simply Navisworks Fundamentals. We introduced the 3 new chapters and exercises for quantification, scripting, and rendering.